Yeah, I joined Sing Africa at Daystar. When I joined Daystar, I had this urge for ministry. And music also was my thing. And there was this singing group that was vibrant. I mean, Sing Africa was everywhere.
Different.
I mean,
different university meetings.
I mean, different nationalities, all types of people, and a very vibrant group that attracted me, and the kind of music and everything. I didn't even know the vision per se, but what I saw, the music and the people attracted me. And I decided, to join. And then when I joined is when I discovered what the vision was, what the mission was, and, went with it. And pretty much almost my entire life in the university, a good portion of my time was taken up through Sing Africa.
Every Tuesday and Thursday.
Yes.
Evening.
Sing Africa. And many weekends. And many weekends as well. As well as away from missions, group missions. We did many personal things for each other, birthdays, and we shared life together as a team.
The PR office used to use us when they would get guests.
Yes.
It was a marketing office.
Yeah.
When they would get guests, they would call Sing Africa to come and sing for the guests.
Yeah.
We have quite a number of those pictures of those events.
When you're skinny and...
Why?
No, but it's years back. It's years ago. Well, Kaberia and a couple of other Sing Africans had been coming back, to see us in Daystar when we were on campus. So Kaberia and I had known each other for a period of time. We were, beyond the stage ministry and all that. So we used to have conversations, even before that. So when this conversation came up, it wasn't the first time that we were having, one-on-one conversation, with him, away from, the normal.
I remember visiting him in a bachelor house.
Yes, in
West.
in South Sea. South Sea.
Yes.
So, and it was a time when I had been asking myself, what would happen to us and what would God have us do next? And so was everybody. And God was speaking to us as individuals and showing us things, what He wanted done. So when this conversation came up, it wasn't new to me in the sense that it's something that had been alive in me. So it was one of those things that somebody says and you are like, yes, that's the thing. That's what I've been feeling. That's what I have been sensing. And then the conversation built it in terms of many ideas, vision-wise and the pictures that we had in our minds in terms of what needed to happen. So it was one of those conversations that you have and it switches you on like anything because you have been burning with something.
So how I joined the conversation about AFLEWO is because Crispus and I were in the same year, graduated same time, the works. The last year of our last Sing Africa year, Crispus was the chair, I was his vice. So we were already working together. I vividly remember when we handed over Sing Africa, we were so tired. We had been in Sing Africa. It was our last semester. We were tired. We were stressed. The day we handed over, there was even an mission that weekend.
That's a mission
we did not go. No. That was in 1999. This is now 2003.
Okay.
So we had been working together for a long time. This was same year we had graduated. So as soon as they had the conversation, and shortly there was, I think, let's bring a group of people together. Guess who he called? So Chris was like, you need to come for this meeting. We need to do it. I was like, okay. The thing is though, because of how much Sing Africa had meant to me on campus, this was a no-brainer. Like we get to continue in Sing Africa. So for me, that was not, it was with people we knew. These guys had been coming back to campus the entire time. Yeah. So it was not a labored conversation. For me, it was really just a continuation of what it is that we were doing.
Actually, I don't even think that we had, that's the way to put it. I would put it like what Ogura said, there's something about what God did for us when we were in Sing Africa that affirmed our passion for nations, and I was at a stage where I'm growing, as a person. Let me talk now personally. Growing, now you're out of Daystar University and then you're out here in the world and then you realize there's quite some difference in your growth. How to answer that question about how that continuity happened is that I got plugged into the International Christian Center Church. And when I joined in 1997, just before I graduated, within that time I'm transitioning into my adult life. I found the church and I was going to fellowship there. But I did not involve myself in ministry at all because I wanted God to speak to me about where am I going to next as a person. By the year 2000, 2001, I had plugged into the ministry of church and I was in the worship team. Then I became a very busy worship leader, very, very busy. At that time, it's very interesting. Our generation has seen a lot of beginnings of some things. At that time, there was the beginnings of a Christian movement that was now beginning to have an impact. That's when a lot of Christian DJs came up. That's when the whole the crossover events began, and they were begun by Christians. That's when choirs like Loreto Youth Fellowship began having albums. Nairobi Chapel had been recording a lot of albums. People like Jack Odongo were thriving in mentoring young people. It happened at around the same time. And then Voices United choir was also created. So now when we were at ICC, we started now doing events called Praise Festival. But as a person, I kept saying, okay, I'm here with ICC, I'm being able to interact with Voices United, I'm interacting with Loreto Youth Fellowship, but I know there's something that God gave me in 96 and it's happening with, that they're saying about us going back because we knew that there's something that God is doing in Africa, but I couldn't put a finger on it. I kept talking to my pastor about it and he said, just keep praying and, see what's going to happen. It's until that 2003 moment that I realized God was training me to understand the body of Christ, to understand the church, to understand the power of an altar of worship. And now bring this continent, these people of Africa that need a lot of hope that is found in Christ, that they should now lift their faces and their hearts to Christ. And so then it became clear that let the university, the guys at the university, continue with the missions that they are doing at their level, while here we now unite the body of Christ and bring them to a place of worship corporately. And that's when now we started now looking at, okay, let's we can only keep going back to the university for so long. We're no longer university students. But let's also continue that thread that is very clear about Africa. When she's talking about it's a no-brainer, it's for real, that's our story. Like no-brainer, you get Africa, anything. And so then we talked amongst ourselves and said, we can't call this thing Africa. But we can structure it in such a way that the thread of that hope continues, either by structuring an umbrella cover or whatever, and I won't get into that right now. But at least we knew in our hearts that whatever we are going to do is going to be for Africa. And we tried a few activities that some of them did not work out. We were trying to do a few, we had ideas of what we can do beyond that, but we came back to doing ministry. All the people that came together were all in Daystar University at Sing Africa in different years, we call it generations, different generations. Yeah.
I think Paul Kehi was the one who graduated the
oldest.
Paul Kehi is the one who graduated the oldest, and I think were the ones who were at the youngest. So that's how
in between. Yeah. So we had from 90, because Paul Kehi, the late Paul Kehi, 1997. 97. I graduated 98. Reverend Tom Otieno 2000. My wife Moru 99. Kamau 98 with me.
And
Stella,
then us.
Then you guys. Kireka or somewhere.
Yeah, Kireka 2001.
2001. Yeah, those are the founding guys. Yes, we're all the not just the Starians, we were Sing Africans.
Yeah. So how we ended up coming together, and so how we ended up coming together and forming and coming up with AFLEWO as a brand. Truth is, I have snippets of that.
This story has got
this story has very many different versions.
But we're here,
depending on memory.
Depending on who is talking. What I do remember is we came together And we came together and said, okay, so we all have the same background. We all have, we all agree that South Africa meant a lot to us. So what are we hearing God saying? At least that much I remember. And so we went back and forth about what it is that we think we want to do. And then eventually it boiled down. Now, the one thing we knew for sure was music. I mean, music was who we were.
Right.
So, then we're like, okay, you can't just sing, maybe, so we threw in prayer in there. We're like, okay, one thing we've always also done is prayed for Africa.
Yeah.
So music and prayer, those were inside. So we're like, okay, so now after that.
We're actually discussing an event.
So that's how, at least we started from the name. What do? We need to sing, we did agree we can't do what South Africa used to do. We couldn't do missions. Now we were gainfully employed, I think at the time you had just gotten married.
Yeah.
So we just couldn't do what South Africa used to do, which is how we ended up with an event.
Right.
Then, we went back and forth until eventually we ended up with an event once a year with a choir. Of course, choir was also a part of who we were.
Yes.
That wasn't also too complicated. So eventually then we ended up with, we're going to do a choir, we're going to do an event once a year, we're going to do it, with music and prayer. So then, of course, now we went again to, okay, so what do we call it? We can't call it South Africa. Oh my, we went back and forth. We came up with all sorts of names. Eventually we get to Africa, let's worship.
And I keep insisting, you're the one who said it.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to that.
Yeah. So I think we said Africa, let's worship.
And then we started doing the acronyms.
The acronym, yeah.
We went down to, I think I can't remember, but I remember doing AFLEWO. AFLEWO. Then I
which
think
didn't sound too
good.
I
was like, that didn't sound right. Then AFLEWO, that sounds good. And shortly, in fact, I think as soon as we all had AFLEWO, we were like, that's
it.
Perfect.
Settled.
That's it. And so that's how AFLEWO was born. I mean, I remember Paul Kehio taking us through all sorts of, we wrote down everything. How do we do a vision? How do we do a mission? What is this about? We were very, very blessed to have had Paul Kehio in the team, because if it was just me, what vision, mission, what are those? Lucky for us, he had been in the field long enough to know what to do. So we really got down into everything that AFLEWO is today. We actually put it down before the first event. It has morphed, but we put it down before the first event.
Yeah. In fact, I was just going to interject and say that gentleman, Paul Kehio, is how he became. He was the very first Sing Africa chairman as students in Daystar. Because what happened is we were working one time with two ladies, Chesubire Teletwala, now it's Chesubire Greg, and Stella Kiguta, who is now Stella Nganga. And we bumped into Paul Kehio, just walking around campus. Daystar, we were in Athi River. There's no much activity beyond studying. We just walk around and take walks in the open desert. And we met him and said, this is the person, you should become the chairman. And say, chairman of what? Of this thing we are doing. And we just, there's nothing else to do, let's come together. And he started teaching us leadership at that time and became the first chairman. Fast forward to this time now. It was no-brainer, let's look for Paul. So now from my point of view is, remember I've talked about ICC meeting very many people, doing a lot of worship events, doing a lot of festivals and getting to know people. My thought was, if it was up to me, like what Rogore is saying, just call Chris Adoa, come with your choir, Kiama, come with your choir, and let's do this thing that we're doing. Since ICC had already started praise festivals that were a buzz in town, it was, people were waiting for the next new thing. And so we already had a worship team from ICC ready to do whatever it was. And Kiama Mugambi in chapel already had a thing that he had been doing. But I want to inform Paul about it. So we meet at a restaurant and tell him there's this idea I have and let's combine these guys and let's sing, I don't know what you think. He takes a serviette. What Americans call napkin, a serviette, when we are talking, and he writes down, okay, that's a good idea. Then after he finishes, he tells me, man, I'm so busy. You're so busy in the banking industry, going up the ranks. Well, some of us were still, looking, hustling, like we say. And he said, I'm kind of busy. Let me give it a thought, and then I'll let you know. According to what Paul would tell me, is that evening he did not sleep. because it really bothered him. It's like the Lord just put it in his heart. I think a week or so later, the day now, I think we met with you, Chris was walking, something around that time, Paul calls and says, can we meet again? By the time we were meeting, he had a document. Paul, Paul this is a guy who told me he's not available. At that time, I think he was now transitioning to Barclays or something.
He was at CBA.
He's at CBA, I think, still at CBA. But he's the guy who told me he didn't have time had a document, and Paul used to have these huge documents. Yeah, very neatly done, about taking what we talked about and put it down as a strategic document of how this thing can go. I was like, wow. Can I just stick to worship leading? This is too much. So by the time we were meeting now, we had already a way forward on how we'll plan it, vision and mission. We had the relationships formed. So already we had 130 people that we could call and form the choir, because Kiama had 50 from Nairobi Chapel. And it's funny that Kiama says that he had a project in his mind, but he can't tell you what exactly he wanted to do. But there are 50 people meeting to practice. So let me just tell them to come to Nairobi Baptist. I think was our first meeting. We were given the kindergarten, a small space. We crammed 100 people there. ICC had 75 people from the worship team who just came in. CITAM, we talked with Pastor Josephat Chichende. Now he's pastor at CITAM Eldoret now. He was here at Valley Road. And we told him about it. He sent his people over. So the music began as we were trying to figure ourselves out. I think AFLEWO began when we were trying to figure everything out as we moved along, but Paul was able to direct us through that. And then I think we had the first event, September 2004. And then we looked at each other and said, okay. And we had 6,000 people in Sitam Karen without much of publicity. I guess it was just word of mouth and pulpit and trusting the pastors, and it just got favor. ICC one announcement, the whole congregation is there, Sitam, and people came, and then from there, that's when we started waking up to the reality that we just stepped into something.
I remember I was the first event manager, and I remember we had, that week is normally set up, we had worked. But I was just like, okay, we'll have a few people come in. This thing, we had not publicized it. Yes. Literally, we just announced it in churches. And I remember standing there at about midnight and looking at all these people. I'm like, who told these people to come? Exactly. Like, how did they find out?
Exactly.
About those 6,000 people in the first event. I'm like, how did these people find out? It was in a Friday in September. It's not New Year's. It's not, it was so humbling to just sit there and look at everybody and just think,
you need to realize
this had better work.
Yeah. There's no social media then.
Yeah.
It's hard copy posters. Yeah. Crusade style where you send people
hard copy posters and announcements in
churches. Yes. Yeah, there you go. No, you're right. It was just mesmerizing. Reverend Tom Otieno was, the first song he sang was Holy Spirit, thou art welcome in this place. And when we were starting that song, we looked at each other and wondered, who are these people? When we had the congregation singing, like this is amazing. Anyway, we borrowed a lot from what ICC was doing with the praise festivals. Because what we used to do, when I say we, I was heavily involved in assisting the then music director, and her name is Rachel, and she used to announce any event that is not Sunday worship, any special event, to be open to the rest of the people in the congregation. So we had Christmas cantatas, we had Easter events. When we started the praise festivals, which incidentally we borrowed the idea from Kampala Pentecostal Church, which is now Watoto Church. And she said, this is a very good thing. That's when she announced to the congregation, we would announce the congregation, join in. And now you register yourself so that, of course, we put the number of people we need and then give a schedule for practices. So it worked for us at the church. And so because we are fresh from that, and like I said, that time there was so much. In fact, I'm remembering there was extreme weekends at Nairobi Lighthouse. So a lot of things were going on. So everyone was ready to give their ideas and willing to, input into something new that was happening. So we borrowed that and it just naturally began. So when Kiama sent his 50 people, and ICC the 75 and the rest of the people around, we had to sort of begin a process of saying, okay, what are your names? And then put it down. Then we realized that we needed money. So we started, finding ways in which we can tone down the number of people.
But remember,
Yeah.
because of that strategic document, because we had been
Right,
meeting from
right.
2003,
Yes.
we literally had gone through most of how we lead work.
Right.
We realized we needed all those things. So by the time all these ideas are coming, it's because Paul Kehi has sat down and taken us through a step by step process of getting to, because we used to meet every Monday. We used to meet every Monday. From when we started meeting officially,
Right.
we met every Monday until we quit. Until we left the team, every Monday. In those first 2 years, we used to leave Desta at
At 1 a.m.
a.m.
But the initial meeting was in our house up to 2.
Yes, even those days before we got Desta to give us
Yes.
space, we never left any of those meetings at
And there was
8.
Tomoteno in between giving us his church. He was at All Saints giving us his office.
So there was a lot of strategic meetings and a lot of putting together. Now, of course, we can't remember which time we did what. But there was a lot of really, because in fact, at some point I was like, why do we meet every Monday? What is it that we discuss for 6 hours every Monday? But I guess that's what then birthed everything that you see as the AFLEWO process.
Yeah.
One of the advantages that we had is that we had worked together before.
Yeah.
I mean, we were not new to each other.
We're doing life and work
Yes,
together.
so the dynamics, group dynamics were there. So as Kaberia said, there was a bit of borrowing, but again, the details from the document fed into that. And then also just looking at things logically, an event in mind and what kind of event we wanted, and so what needed to happen before that. And so everything was scheduled in accordingly. When we started, 2017 was not even in the picture, because I remember that when we started, we called this a project. We called it a project. Even our documentation, had it as a project. And it's that with time, things became, we saw things in a better way with time.
Clearer.
God started downloading things to us along the way, more than, more than we knew at the beginning. Right. So when we started, it was, bring these people together for a good time of worship, bring people from different denominations and all that. But we didn't have 2017 in mind. But then along the way, we started having conversations in terms of long-term conversations. How would this be? And again, it was one of those things that was, what can I say? One of those things that we all talk to each other about, and at a meeting where we are thinking, by what date do we reach the entire continent? Because at that point in time, we had sensed that we needed to take this to the entire continent.
But those Christmas,
yes.
If I interrupt,
yes.
Those conversations began in 2005, after we did the first event.
Yes. So at some point, we had to ask ourselves, by when do we want this to be saturated across? Right. And 2017, I can't say that God said to us in a certain way that 2017 or someone saw a vision or something dropped from heaven saying 2017. No, it was just a year that we felt, that we felt was,
because I remember
was
it was
a good enough time.
Paul K, you said 2017.
So it wasn't one of those big spiritual moments, so to speak. Yeah. But we felt comfortable with the year and we ran with it.
And 2017 reached.
Before it reached, we were like, wait, it's a few years to 2017. Maybe we might not get.
Before 2017 reached, we started a process in the year 2014. End of 2013 into 2014, we started a process of evaluation, looking back to where we had come from, where we were and where we were going. We had a time to look at things which had gone well, things which had not gone too well. And it is during that process that we also had to rethink about the year 2017.